And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. As you know, we have done we're in the middle of a series of interviews with Georgia 6 Congressional District special election candidates. If you just tuned in for the first time, there are 18 candidates in the race. There's 11 that identify as Republicans. Five identify Democrat and two identify independent. We have invited all 18 candidates. We've not excluded any candidate for approximately a 30-minute video interview here that just to get you, the voter, the most information to make a decision on April 18th. Our interview today is with Democrat candidate Dr. Quigg. Dr. Quigg, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's good to talk to you. I enjoyed meeting you Sunday at the forum, and that was very helpful for me to hear all the candidates on the stage. So we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Quigg, let me just start out with same thing I've done with every candidate. Give us just a brief overall of who you are and why you decided to get into this race for the 6th Congressional District. A little bit about yourself, and again, why you are running for this office.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm a physician. I practiced medicine in cardiology for 25 years. My last position was the director of the heart failure and heart transplant program at Northwestern. I left that job as a single mother to care for my two sons, one who has disabilities. And during that time, I lost my health insurance. I was uncovered for some years until the Affordable Care Act policies came out. I also struggled with having my son's medical expenses covered by employer-based insurance under his father. When the Affordable Care Act was being negotiated in Congress, I followed along and was thrilled that finally a law was being put in place that would provide coverage for millions of Americans that had no access. At that time, we began to enroll people in policies in 2013, and I helped with that. I saw hundreds of thousands of people that were thrilled to have insurance, some for the first time in their lives. Throughout the enrollment periods, the plans have enrolled more and more patients, and now for 2017, we have 4 million people in this country, 40 million people in this country that are covered by Affordable Care Act policies or expanded Medicaid. Of course, when the election happened, I was quite concerned with our new president that we would go backwards and they would attempt to repeal the ACA and to replace it with something that was certainly not as good, and that is the case. I live in Tom Price's district, and after meeting him and talking to him about some of these issues, I was a bit shocked as to his mindset about removing this law, starting all over again, and of course now we're finding out with a law that is going to take insurance away from 24 million people over the next decade. So I decided to run for his seat.
Okay, when you say take insurance away, let's break this down because I heard you talk about it Sunday. Affordable Care Act. Let's start with that. Now, Tom Price, I think, did a town hall. Did you attend the town hall, or are you aware of it, or?
No, it was a national town hall by CNN last night that was televised.
Okay, and okay, Affordable Care Act. Do you leave it alone as it is? Do you repair it, as some say? If you repair it, what do you repair? What is working? What is not working? I mean, can you break down the Affordable Care Act and tell us what you think should be done concerning the health care?
Well, the Affordable Care Act was passed in March 2010. And the policies, the Affordable Care Act policies, the qualified health care plans, went into effect for January 14. There are several things that became immediately available. The insurers were not following the law, and that they were not permitted under the Affordable Care Act to increase their premiums more than 10% per year. Unfortunately, this was not enforced. The federal government had every right to enforce this part of the law and require they show that they're either financially unstable or wouldn't be able to continue to have their company in existence before they're permitted to increase the premiums. The second part is that they, even if they didn't increase the premiums substantially, they increased the deductibles. Well, the law didn't have a portion there that said they weren't allowed to increase the deductibles more than a certain amount per year. All our Congress had to do was make amendments, starting from that and forward. So when any law goes into effect, this is true when Medicare was first passed, amendments need to be passed as they find out that things they thought would work don't work, or things that were concerned whether they'd work, don't. And we've certainly, had issues come up throughout the now 4 enrollment periods that show that we needed to have this law modified. But unfortunately, there was gridlock in Congress, and they were so adamantly against this law, the Affordable Care Act, which they wanted to label Obamacare and tag as something quite evil and dangerous, that they refused to make modifications. And Congress has been willing to make changes in a law to improve it. So first of all, we need to start where we should have started back in 2014 with making modifications to the law to improve and expand it.
What modifications? Because let me bring up some things that I hear in the media every day. I'll give you a chance to address. No matter what media outlet I go to, I will hear something like the states where premiums went up 70%, 100% in Arizona. I will hear that there are states with only one provider and providers pulling out of states. I will hear counties, how many counties in the country that do not have a provider. I spoke to a lady the other day that said they have to drive 100 miles to find somebody that will take the insurance that they're using. So all of these things, which I know you and I both hear, whether it's true or false on the media, how they do with the information and put it out. But all those things in that wide umbrella, what do you do with that? Is there any of that true, false, or how do you fix that?
Well, how the law is implemented is different from state to state. If you take states, for example, like California and New York, who fully embraced the law, they started their own state exchange. They have insurers competing to be on their exchange. They don't allow insurers on their exchange if the lowest deductible they have is $5,000. That's not what people want to buy. So they say, if you want to be on the exchange and advertise all of your policies, you have to give us one that's a $500 deductible or a $1,000 deductible. So California has some 30, 40 insurers trying to get on the exchange because it's a huge volume of people that are purchasing insurance. If you take a state like Georgia, on the other hand, that did not fully embrace the law, did not start a state exchange, and refused to expand Medicaid, which is one of the ways we reduce the health care costs in a state. They refused Medicaid expansion, which would have brought $3.8 billion to Georgia over 3 years to cover people that are not able to purchase policies on the website, yet did not qualify for Medicaid in its strict guidelines of up to 100% of poverty level. Then healthcare expenses drop. So in Georgia, for example, when insurers came in and said, we want a 65% premium increase, our legislators and state insurance commission didn't say why. Are you going to go under financially? Or are you going to be forced to close down your policies in Georgia? Or they just rubber stamped. They gave them 25, 30% premium increases. Those were inappropriate. That's pure profit. And frankly, the law outlines that insurers are not, they're supposed to provide 80% inpatient care and 20% in administrative in profit. And that's not what's happening. It's because each state has a different mindset. And you can imagine the ones that don't like the ACA, they make it look worse by allowing premiums to increase further. The other thing is these changes, the changes need to be made nationally. For example, California and New York, they passed laws quickly about provider accuracy. If a policy states that your specific doctor or facility is covered, the insurance required to cover those facilities and physicians during the year that someone signs up. There's another law that's being passed state by state called physician adequacy, so that the insurers are required to have providers within a certain number of miles from your home and a certain number of providers. Those are being passed state by state. And the last is the bills regarding what's called surprise billing, because now the insurers they're very picky as to who they want to have preferred providers and facilities. It's based almost completely on how cheap the reimbursement can be, so that physicians and radiologists and different types of testings in hospitals may not be preferred providers, and that states like California and New York, again, passed a law saying that if someone's admitted to a hospital, they have to pay for services that are provided by these quote unnetwork network providers.
So you say that states that embraced the law, there's a difference in what you will find as far as the performance of the law than the states that did not embrace it, and that's some of the problem there.
Yes, for example, California, the average premium increase was about 3.6% for 2017. Arizona, on the other hand, that wants to slap the law in the face, make it look as bad as possible, allowed premiums to go up so high that patients can't afford the insurance. So it's a matter of wanting to implement. Yes, this law was passed by a Democratic majority, but that doesn't mean that we can't work across the aisle to keep improving it. And doesn't mean that, one side of the aisle has to do everything they can to make it look bad so that, citizens of this country are told that it's so horrid that they should want to repeal it. All of this could have been fixed.
All right, okay. Let me ask you this. All right, so, the direction I'm going is called the reality of the legislative body today. The reality of the legislative body today is, if elected, you would go into a Republican majority, okay, and have to work within a Republican majority. So it looks as though, now I don't know about the American health care plan, what they'll end up with. There's a lot of discontent on all sides of the aisle and in many caucuses there right now concerning what the Republicans have out. But if it comes to just totally being against repealing the ACA or being a part of inserting what you think, you're a doctor, and I'm going to tell you, listening to you Sunday and today, I think you would have some great ideas on what to put in a healthcare plan, whether it's the ACA or anything else. So do you think you should go and be a part of the process of whatever they do, making it better, or just go there and say, hey, I'm going to do everything to stop the ACA from being repealed?
I think there's no reason to repeal it. It's a good law. We needed to make amendments. We need to move forward to do that. It took years to get this law created. This is very complex. President Trump admitted that. There's a great deal of complexity there. And for the Republicans to come out with a law of a matter of weeks and a couple marathon sessions overnight is fascinating. It certainly is not the way to create a new law that's so difficult to create. I will insist and vote for continuing the Affordable Care Act and make adjustments. Now, of course, both sides of the aisle need to be working on this, as they should have been through the past 6 years on this. But there is no reason to create a new law where you have new problems. Certainly, the law was negotiated, in committee without any input from the Congressional Budget Committee. Now they've allowed the Congressional Budget Committee to review the law, and it's fiscally not feasible. It makes all of the policies more expensive, especially for those that make of lesser means. It makes policies for 50 to 64-year-olds 5 times more than those would have been under the Affordable Care Act. And to start all over with something that is clearly wrong, clearly won't work, and then try to fix that in retrospect, it makes no sense.
Dr. Quigg, let me ask you, now, if elected and you went to Washington, D.C., and I think many Americans, we see several polls, tired of gridlock, tired of party line, tired of nobody can come together and work out a bill on both sides of the aisle, whatever the case may be. Do you see, how would you be, as the representative of the 6th District, the people there, would you be open to look at what the Republicans have, offer what you think needs modified? Would you be open to working with the legislation you see? I mean, how would you approach being the representative of the 6th District on legislation that the Republicans are putting out?
You're saying with reference to this new health care law?
Anything, because right now it's, and like I said, I don't want to take up our time, but right now when Obama, it was, President Obama put it out, so we have to say no. President Trump put it out, so we have to say no. President Obama put it out, so we have to obstruct it. President Trump, I mean, it's just something we hear out here, the people, every day. As a member of Congress, there's a lot of Americans, maybe those in the 6th District, are saying, hey, we want somebody to go and look at the merit of the legislation, not just what party line it came from. You see what I'm saying? So how would you approach looking at some of the things? Is there anything you've seen out of the Republicans thus far that you could work with? I mean, what say you?
It's funny you should mention that, because Obama came out pretty early and said that if you can amend and improve the Affordable Care Act, you can name it whatever you want. So I have no problem. They want to call it Trump Care, and it's a much better law and covers more people and continues to expand coverage. That's fine with me. The thing is to get what people need in this country. You know, as far as the other laws that are coming out, these are things very dramatic. Having a Muslim ban, building a wall, having a massive deportation task force. It's hard to compromise on things like that have no respect for humanity. So I would have trouble negotiating across the aisle about how many Muslims we should ban. We shouldn't be banning any. As far as working across the aisle, I would be representing a district that is, for at least this point in time, primarily Republican. And I believe that people across this country, for the most part, care about the same things. For example, public schools in District 6. That's not a Democrat or Republican concern. We all have kids in schools. We want them to be better. We want more opportunities. We'd all like debt-free college in Georgia. We'd also like to have a rapid transportation system. We need federal fundings to do that, because everyone suffers when they have struggle to get downtown Atlanta, or the pollution that's being developed. So I'm one to work across the aisle. And if the Republicans had come up, for example, with a great health care plan that was a great alternative to the Affordable Care Act, I'd be fine with that. But right now, they haven't done that.
Let me take a couple things that you brought up. You said Muslim ban. So do you feel the first and the most recent executive order, do you feel that is not intended to have any reflect on national security, and it's a Muslim ban? Now, those are my words, but you said Muslim ban. So do you not feel that has any reflect on national security, or do you feel that was a Muslim ban?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with national security. President Trump is banning 7 countries, of which there's not been one terrorist that's come to the U.S. and done any damage. Yet he's not banned countries such as Pakistan, Saudi Arabia is where the bin Ladens came from, and other places where there have been terrorist attacks. So this is a pick and choose thing. He says it's because there are terrorists coming from these countries, but most of the terrorist attacks since 9/11 have been homegrown terrorism. So what are you going to do? You're going to ban people that are American citizens from going to visit their family and coming back? This is strictly a religious ban. I think that you may have heard that, judicial system has come down and put a stay on the ban. The fact that President Trump says this is an emergency national security problem was contradicted by the fact when he created the second ban, he waited 10 days for it to go into force. Well, if it was an emergency, like he says, why would he wait 10 days? There's no emergency here. The courts are saying this is strictly a religious ban, and this is against our Constitution, and I will fight against these types of executive orders or laws that are passed.
Okay, let me ask you a question. You brought up deportation force, okay? Because like I said when we started the interview, I would go in the direction that, maybe some things you bring up. You brought up deportation force. So can you give me what does Dr. Quigg's immigration plan look like? What do you think? Do you think we should give a path to citizenship or a path to residency? What would you support?
Well, I think we've needed comprehensive immigration reform for a long time, and that's been a gridlock in Congress also. You've got 11 million or even more people that have come to this country over 20, 30 years. We don't have the financial resources if we wanted to deport all those people. President Obama signed an executive order to prioritize those that are criminals, and they should be prioritized. And the criminals that have major offensive should be gone first. Some of the other minor infractions, I think, need to be considered, but if they have broken the law or they're felon, they of course should be considered for deportation. families that have been, the parents have been here 20, 25 years and have been working in this country. And they're working for everyone. They're not just working for Democrats or Republicans. They're working in places like, providing child care for your children, or cleaning your home, or working in your yard, or working at companies as executives. I'm a physician, and there's 60-some children that are illegal immigrants. They're in medical school. These people are not just someone that don't contribute to society. They do. They have the right to go to school and go to college and become successful members of society. They shouldn't have their parents, pulled out from under them when they go home from school. When they're getting a scholarship to a major university in this country. That you want to disrupt families like that? Well, people from all over the world have come to this country to try to find a better way of life, and all of them have worked hard. There's this perception that if you're an immigrant that you don't work, you're lazy, you get Medicaid. That's not the case. In fact, immigrants are the hardest working people and have the highest level of education than some of the rest of Americans. So this perception of they're causing problems in our country, it's true for those that are criminals, and those should be prioritized.
Well, I would agree on the that immigrants are hardworking people. I agree a lot of naturalized American citizens are hardworking people. Well, what I would ask you there is even though they've been here 25 years, I'll agree with you. I know people that have been here for 25 years. I'll agree with that. But at the same time, when you say immigration, but it's illegal immigration, I think most Americans, because that was right up close to the top of the issues for Americans during the campaign, the last presidential campaign. So, I mean, the president currently, as I hear it, he calls them bad dudes or whatever, but he wants to get, the drug dealers and the people that have broken several laws out of here. But I've heard him say several times there has to be compassion and a pathway for the ones that have been here for a long time, that are following the laws while they're here. So it doesn't sound like to me you differ a lot on some of the things he said, but I wouldn't say you agree with him. I wouldn't do that. I don't want that misunderstood.
No, I don't agree with them. You can't label people as having bad dudes. There's bad dudes everywhere. But of course, those that are hardened criminals need to be sent back to the country where they came from. America is a place where you have an opportunity to improve your life, not to cause problems. So yes, there are immigrants from every country that come here to work hard, or successful. I don't agree with Donald Trump that we have to get rid of them all. I think that there are so many here, 11 million. They're not all, from South America or Mexico. There are good portions from countries all over the world. And they are successful citizens, and they should be treated with respect and allowed to, apply for citizenship as according to our ability to process them.
I think a lot of people are only asking for them to enter the country legally. So I think our immigration in general, we need to revamp it totally so people can enter this country legally. But I think maybe, you continually say immigrants. So I'm okay with that. That's not my place to judge, but you say immigrants, and I think these.
Well, I of course I get your point. No one should go there illegally. They should go through the system.
Right.
It's just you can't go back to retroactively 20 years. At this point on, if we're going to have a more a zealous way to try to keep people from coming in illegally, yes, we should enforce that. We should have done that always, but. It's very hard when you have people from countries, refugees, those that are fleeing poverty, who will do anything to try to bring a better way of life to their families, their children. It's hard to stop that, and we need to be sympathetic to that. That was the reason they came, not to do evil to our country, but to improve their quality of life and that of their children's.
Okay, so, some did, and I don't take this wrong. I'm not going to make this an argument. Some did, but there are some that did not come for the quality of life, and that's in all things that happen. There's good in all, and there's bad. I want to move past that because I want to talk about something, and you have it on your website. Let's talk about college affordability. And the reason I want to bring that up is, uh, you know, Bernie Sanders during the campaign really made an appeal with especially junior colleges or community colleges being free. And what do you say about a college affordability? Because I personally think the next bubble that's going to burst is student debt. So what say you where education's concerned on college affordability?
Well, I think that this country has become one where those that are wealthy can afford to go to go to the college of their choice, and those that are not may not be able to go or struggle terribly to go. I had my own personal experience many, many years ago. I worked 2, 3 jobs when I was in college and medical school. I still took out huge student loan debt, and I must have been over 40 before I paid most of that back. So things have only gotten worse. I have to tell you, given the socioeconomic group I came from, I would never have been able to go to college or medical school, given the costs, the exorbitant costs now. So I think we need to make school available and equal for everyone. In Georgia, we have the Hope and the Zell Scholarship, which is really one of the best scholarship programs in the country. What we need in Georgia is the difference between that and tuition. So that should be easy compared to other states. But students should not have to borrow. If they're not able to they should be able to get scholarships. They should be able to get federal funding and state funding if needed to allow them to go through school. They shouldn't be forced to go to the worst colleges because they're the ones that don't have as much money. All colleges should give a good education. I think it's very important to level the playing field because right now the wealthy are able to, educate their children anywhere they want in the country, and there are those that just can't put it together, and there aren't even enough loans if you want to go to a good college or a graduate school. So I think it's very important to make it debt-free, and that we continue to expand that situation to all types of schools, such as technical schools and other schools where people may choose those as their careers.
Let me ask you a question, because when you say debt-free, if we make colleges debt-free, where does the money come from? And don't take that wrong. Sometimes when I hear that these optimistic views of everybody goes to college debt-free, where does the money come from? How do we pay for that?
Well, first of all, if you come from a family of means, you're going to pay most of the tuition or all of the tuition yourself. It's those that don't have the means to pay for their tuition and room and board and books and all that need assistance. So he's not saying everyone goes with a free ride. Those that can afford it will pay for it. Those that should not be excluded from a higher education. So that instead of accumulating a huge amount of debt, there may be scholarship programs. I know one of the things that was done when I was in medical school and still is done is that for a commitment of the government paying for your medical school, that you either go into the armed services or there are other areas where there are a few doctors that are available. You go to practice to those areas and return public health service. So there are ways to do that. That can be done with college also. But the opportunity to be able to go to school should be there for everyone.
Okay, Dr. Quigg, just a couple more things before we wrap up this morning. And it has just come out, a rough draft, I think, this morning at 7 o'clock, but we've been hearing that President Trump's new budget would have several cuts in the budget. Have you had an opportunity to glance over any of the agencies or anything that's going to be cut? Are there things that you see there that are positives or negatives? And because if elected, you could be up there very shortly and be involved in a lot of these things that are taking place right now in the current day. So concerning the budget, you said the EPA, you got your defense. He's going to raise spending in defense, cuts in the EPA, cuts in the State Department, and just anything there that you see positive or negative in the budget so far?
Well, I haven't seen what's come out this morning so far, but I know of the other ones that have been threatened. I mean, the EPA, he nominated someone who
Scott Pruitt.
The EPA, Scott Pruitt, that has sued the EPA 14 times because they were in violation in his state of EPA goals. He made it clear that he wants to dismantle the EPA. There's a law that's going through Congress through Louderman, who's one of our Congress people here from Georgia, to dismantle it by 2018. I totally disagree with that. The EPA has made huge strides in improving our air quality and water quality and the health and safety of Americans. So I'm totally in disagreement. I would fight against any law that would try to reduce the amount of funding. The other issues are education. We need more funding to public schools, not less. We need to make our public schools equal throughout the country. Not much of the local funding is due to real estate taxes, and those that have more expensive houses and pay more real estate taxes have better schools. That's not fair. Just because you're in a community where and you're a certain level of income, that your children should have a lesser education. I don't agree with that. You mentioned a third thing that he was going to cut. I'm sorry if you could repeat.
Well, there's things that are coming out. The State Department is going to have cuts. The EPA going to have cuts. Defense, he's going to, I think it's about $60 billion raising in defense, about 6%
right.
raising.
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, my understanding was $54 billion he wanted to increase.
Well, it might be 54. So give or take $1 billion.
I mean, that's pretty obvious right there. He'd rather plan for us going to war than for diplomacy. He wants to cut personnel and activities in the State Department, which accomplish, resolving problems with diplomacy rather than war. I totally disagree with that. Our job is to have more diplomacy, not less.
Well, I have to bring up now two things before we leave, but I have to bring up something before we go because, and I'll tell you, Dr. Quigg, because you have qualified to run as a Democrat, tonight the DCCC is having a major fundraiser for one of your candidates on the Democrat side, and another candidate that I won't bring up the name, I have the video, but another candidate, stood up and said, we have 5 good candidates. And I'm going to agree with that. For people or voters that agree or see things, the issues on the Democrat side, you have 5 very good candidates. Are you concerned yourself as one of the candidates that the DCCC and the major players, DNC, are backing one particular candidate on your side of the aisle?
Well, I'm not a Democratic policymaker, but I believe their bylaws say that in a primary election, they're not to support any one candidate. So they are doing that. The candidate you're speaking of would like to pretend that this isn't a primary, but it is a primary. There are 5 Democratic candidates. They're all qualified. They have different credentials. And I believe the voters have the right to choose rather than being, forced by the amount of money that's being spent on one individual candidate to, as they say, coalesce around them because money buys the election. I don't believe money buys the election. I count on the constituents in District 6 to choose the right person that will send the right message to Washington and will hit the ground running. For example, I have a lifetime of experience and accomplishments. I have no concerns whatsoever that I could handle this job. I have a background in the Affordable Care Act like no other candidate anywhere. In fact, anyone in Congress. There are no physicians there that are experts in the Affordable Care Act, and it could work and talk across the aisle about the issues and how to improve what we have. Yes, I think it's a problem, and they don't seem to care whether the other candidates, are concerned about this. In fact, as far as I know, they've never even attempted to speak with any of us or look at our
that's what I was going to say is I'm a little confused on how they made the decision because I tell you what, Dr. Quigg, I came there and I sat up in the back of the room and I know you met Katie and she talked to you extensively and I watched, yes, there's differences with all 5 candidates, obviously all 5 candidates, but I watched that for 2 hours in the back of the room, was very observant, and I said, if I'm one of the 500 people in this room and I'm here today to see which candidate, I have 5 candidates, very good candidates to listen to. And that was my takeaway. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, so how did they who singled out this candidate? Because I personally just watched it in the presidential race, whether you supported Hillary Clinton or not during the primary, but I watched during the primary and I thought, wait a minute, don't keep doing this to Democrat voters, is my opinion, okay? That's my
Yes.
opinion. And I seen that and I said, who made this decision? And I will tell you on the other side of the coin, you know, I think most of America is tired of elite politicians, no matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. Those are my words. But I had to ask you if that's a concern that they have actually lined up behind one candidate with 5 of you in the race.
Well, it's funny you should say that because one of my slogans is that I'm here for the people, not for the elite Democrats. So I think that they've shown their true colors. The fact that they've never, as far as I know, discussed with any of us our candidacy. They're not supposed to, by their bylaws, as far as I know, to choose someone. The way they chose that person, I don't think has a lot to do with their specific qualifications, but for other reasons. But I have to tell you, I see both sides throughout the district of those that are panicked about worrying about, you know, we need just one candidate to get behind, or we'll never win, or those that say, you know, I have a right to decide on who I want to vote. No one's going to tell me, well, the DNC or whoever, or there's a certain amount of funds that one candidate has that makes them more likely to win. They want to look at the candidates. We're asked to give, all of us are going to forums 2-3 times a week because they want to see the difference in the Democratic candidates and they want to see all 18. And I believe the voters will make the decision, not the DNC, as to who they choose is their most ideal for whatever reason candidate that they're going to put feet on the ground and do fundraising and financial support. You know, I'll have to leave that to the DNC to figure out why they're continuing to do that. But I don't think it's helpful for democracy.
Okay, I agree, and we got to close, but I thank you for being open to discussing that because I have invited every candidate regardless, I mean, independent, Democrat, Republican, and to have basically a general conversation. I think we have this morning a good conversation. My final thing is, and I know I've said 2 things several times, but the national debt, the debt ceiling. I've not left a single candidate without discussing what do we do. The reality is we're bumping 20 trillion. Yesterday, the debt ceiling expired. What do we do to get the national debt under control?
Well, first of all, we don't raise military spending by $54 billion. You know, I think we need to look carefully at our military as to, you know, how the spending's taking place. What things do we really need? What things do we need to improve and update? Throwing more money at the military for unclear reasons is a big question mark in my mind. I think someone who knows about the military needs to go through budgetary concerns and make sure that we're not continuing programs that are not helpful or not. You know, I hear issues all over the country that ships are being built in states that are completely defunct, that will never be used again because the funds were allocated. We need to look carefully at this budget and every other budget. I do believe there's waste in government. There's duplication of services. Instead of this mindset that President Trump has is to just get rid of people and agencies that he doesn't particularly like the State Department or the EPA, that we need to look at all of the agencies to see how things can be streamlined and modernized. So those are areas that we must move forward on. But the fact that this president wants to increase the budget in one department, $54 billion, is going the wrong direction. That's not going to take our deficit down, that's for sure.
If elected, specifically the 6th district, narrowing this down to the district you want to represent, what is number one or 2 things that specifically you see in the 6th district that you want to go to Washington, D.C. and say, hey, I want to do this for my district?
Well, you know, one of the key problems, I think, is the fact that we don't have a rapid transportation system. This city is a large city. Nationally, any cities this large have rapid transportation for most of their suburbs, going to the downtown area and across town. So we need that. We are polluting the air. We're making it difficult for people to work. We're inhibiting the ability of corporations to start and build further out in the suburbs. They've sort of gathered around the Sandy Springs area as the Mortis station stops there. So I think that's something we need public funding for that. One thing President Trump said he did promise was that there would be a bill passed for to improve construction in this country, and we could use those funds here for that. So those are things that put people to work building the transportation system, They make it possible for companies to come where there'd be more jobs created, a higher tax base, and which will provide better schools and other things that our communities need.
Well, Dr. Quigg, we appreciate you coming on this morning, and we appreciate the conversation. We hope we've achieved what we wanted to give an opportunity for voters out there to get to know you a little better and see, hear some of the positions you have on the issues. We will upload this. We'll be uploading this to our YouTube page, and we will tag you in it so you will have it, and you could also put this interview out. So again, thank you very much, and we'd like to have you back real soon.
All right. Thanks so much for the invitation.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too. Dr. Quigg, one of the Democrat candidates in the 6th congressional race, my words, the Democrat candidates are upset. There's 5 in that race. And the DCCC, which we've talked about, is supporting one candidate. Democrats are supporting one candidate. We're going to take a break so I can come back and wrap up the show. And as soon as we do, we got a couple other things we want to go over before we close today's show. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office.